Why is excellence so important? It is a well-known fact that the results that we get are always in direct proportion to the quality of our actions. If we put half-hearted actions, we achieve minimal results. If we give our absolute best, we achieve miracles. The concept of excellence can be applied to any area of our life, be it our health, wealth, career, or relationships. There are rising standards in almost every life domain. Sometimes good enough just isn't good enough. In sports, for example, the Olympic records of 100 years ago are equivalent to average performances by today's high school athletes. There are also rising standards in intellectual disciplines. For example, Roger Bacon, a 13th century English scholar, said that it would take 30 to 40 years of dedicated work to master the mathematics that was understood at that time. This same body of knowledge is currently being taught to high school students. Excellence does not happen by accident or luck. It originates in habits built a day at a time. American football coach Vince Lombardi said, "The quality of your life will be determined by the depth of your commitment to excellence more than any other factor." In a world that has moved on to a knowledge economy that is fueled by innovation, research, and development, the concept of excellence takes on a whole new level of importance and relevance. Today's enterprises face unprecedented pressure from more nimble startups, volatile market trends, and a global health crisis. Those that thrive will be hyper-focused on driving value in the long term, innovating and adapting to changing conditions faster than their competitors. For this reason, the Tertiary Education Trust Fund, as part of its R&D paradigm shift, has established a whopping 24 centers of excellence spread across Nigerian universities, polytechnics, and colleges of education. No matter what you do in life, doing it to the best of your abilities brings great rewards. Making a commitment to personal excellence ensures a life full of success, passion, and fulfillment. These are the chronicles of the journey to institutionalize research and development in Nigeria. Hello, and welcome to this edition of TETFund, The Paradigm Shift. I am Stanley Bentu. A COE, or Center of Excellence, is a centralized unit of dedicated people with a mission to streamline access to scarce, high-demand capabilities for rapid execution across any business. Now, this group sharpens expertise in a specific subject area, and it also standardizes best practices for wide-scale adoption, and it provides thought, leadership, and direction in any area of expertise. In the most recent times, TETFund has evolved to become more than just an interventionist agency that was created to salvage tertiary education in Nigeria. TETFund has become one of the agencies actively participating in Nigeria's economic recovery. Now, how, I hear you ask? Well, the answer is quite simple. If the academia, working with industry and government in the triple helix model, is the only way to move Nigeria to the top of a world dominated by the knowledge economy and digital economy, then the organization that fosters this relationship is suddenly indispensable for achieving economic targets and goals. In the course of the past year and a half, TETFund inaugurated 24 centers of excellence and set them up nicely with an initial funding of 1 billion naira each. During the inauguration, the Executive Secretary of TETFund, Professor Suleiman Elias Bogoro, promised that, in addition to funding, the agency would work closely with the centers to ensure success. Now, this promise was kept with a 2-day capacity building workshop organized by TETFund and held at Fraser Suites in Abuja. Today's episode of the program spotlights the workshop, and we will get all of the details in a moment. But first, let's take a journey through the history of the TETFund COEs. Take a look.
The TETFund Centers of Excellence intervention was considered in the 2020 intervention budget. The implementation of the plan was designed to start with 12 centers which were established in 12 first and second generation universities in Nigeria, 2 universities per geopolitical zone. The sum of 12 billion naira was approved by the fund's Board of Trustees for the establishment of the Pioneer Centers of Excellence at the cost of 1 billion naira per center. So in November 2020, this plan came into fruition. The University of Abuja was chosen for public governance and leadership, University of Jos and the Abubakar Tafawa Balewa University, both focusing on different aspects of food security, while the University of Maiduguri is tackling arid zone research development. Other centers include the Nnamdi Azikiwe University, whose area of interest is root crop research and development, the Michael Okpara University focusing on agricultural engineering and translational studies, Bayero University Kano to work on renewable energy, and the Usman Danfodio University, whose expertise is on urology and nephrology. Rounding up the list are the University of Lagos, the Center of Excellence on Biodiversity Conservation and Ecosystems Management. The University of Ibadan is focusing on multidisciplinary studies, the University of Uyo on computational intelligence, and the University of Benin is focusing on aquaculture and food technology. These selected institutions were invited for a formal allocation and briefing ceremony, which took place on Thursday, the 26th of November 2020 at the TETFund boardroom. The Executive Secretary further directed the Research and Development Department to organize a training workshop on establishment, operation and administration of Centers of Excellence to all the heads of all the selected institutions, the directors and the staff of all the TETFund Centers of Excellence. 3 experienced resource persons who were serving as the directors of the World Bank African Centers of Excellence led the training. Following the Executive Secretary's approval, the Research and Development Department successfully organized a 2-day training workshop which took place on the 17th and the 18th of December 2020 at Fraser Suites in Abuja. Furthermore, the resource persons submitted their reports to the Executive Secretary and the Board of Trustees for consideration and approval. 1 year later, in November 2021, TETFund kept its plans on track with the establishment of another 12 Centers of Excellence, but this time at polytechnics and colleges of education, following the same principles of geographical spread to ensure inclusion and diversity. The Executive Secretary of TETFund, that's Professor Suleiman Bogoro, said 2 were selected in each geopolitical zone of the country and would be funded for a period of 5 years. The centers are the Federal Polytechnic Nasarawa and the Federal College of Education Pangshin, that's North Central, Federal Polytechnic Bauchi and the Federal College of Education Yola, that's Northeast, Federal Polytechnic Kaduna and the Federal College of Education Zaria, that's Northwest, Federal Polytechnic Nikede and Alva Nikoku Federal College of Education Owerri at Southeast, Federal Polytechnic Auchi and the Federal College of Education Technical, that's Omoku in the South-South, Yaba College of Technology Lagos and Adeyemi College of Education Ondo, that's Southwest. Inaugurating these centers, Professor Bogoro charged them to hit the ground running by ensuring to strengthen the sustainability beyond 2026. These 6 polytechnics are to work on enhancing entrepreneurship among students, such as their engagement in extracurricular and co-curricular activities, ranging from training programs, business plan competitions to entrepreneurship clubs that play an indispensable role in fostering a culture of entrepreneurship and expanding the students' involvement. On the other hand, the task before the 6 colleges of education selected to host the TCOEs is to specialize in pedagogy and periodic curriculum review and development. TETFund is encouraging the established tradition that higher institutions are the bastion of intellectualism and the breeding ground for creativity, original thinking, and innovation that will shape and define civilizations and drive economies and development. The TCOEs are one vital piece of a larger jigsaw puzzle that, when put together, will create a big picture of Nigeria's clear path to global economic relevance.
Well, now that we know what TETFund COEs are all about and why they were set up, it's time to check up on how far along the agency has come in its promise to work closely with the Centers of Excellence and ensure that they have everything that they need to be successful. Just last week, TETFund organized a capacity building workshop for the operation and administration of TETFund Centers of Excellence. This time, the focus was on polytechnics and colleges of education. But today's episode of the program focuses on the opening ceremony of the workshop, which boasted of great minds like Professor Hadiza Galadenchi, Professor Akinyemi Olukayode, and Professor G.A. Aderumu as facilitators. Let's find out what happened there.
Having successfully set up and provided training for the operation of the 12 Pioneer Centers of Excellence in the universities, TETFund turned its attention to the colleges of education and the polytechnics to guarantee equal support for the institutions. A 1 billion naira takeoff fund was backed up with a 2-day capacity building workshop for all the heads of the selected institutions, their directors, and the staff of the TCOEs. Dr. Salihu Bakari Giri, that's the Director of Research and Development / Centers of Excellence at TETFund, gave the welcome address in which he stressed the need to understand the importance of the Centers of Excellence as a global concept designed to develop exceptional capacity in personnel and equipment, as well as the standards of operations.
The essence, which I will allow the ES to talk here, is to ensure that our institutions truly become institutions of higher learning that they ought to be, that they should be. With the allocation of 1 billion naira each for these 12 centers of excellence, there is expected that there will be a lot of activities around research for polytechnics, skills development, and entrepreneurship, for which is their major mandate, and for the colleges of education for pedagogy and curriculum development. We all know that today, if we do not have the right caliber of teachers in our primary and junior secondary schools, then forget it, because the foundation will crumble and will crash. And once there is no foundation, the university system will also suffer. Likewise, the polytechnics today, the lack of jobs in this country, the issue of unemployment in this country is directly related to lack of skills.
The TETFund boss, that's Professor Suleiman Bogoro, was on hand to point out that TETFund sought the input of the National Board of Technical Education and the National Commission for Colleges of Education in selecting the focus of the COEs. He emphasized that the institutions were invited to the 2-day workshop to fully understand the expected standards of TETFund's Centers of Excellence, noting that he wants to make a difference. Professor Bogoro insists on the chosen institutions showing evidence of the fruits of TETFund's huge investment in the scheme in the next coming years.
It's important we understand the concept of Centers of Excellence. It has a global context. There are indices and factors associated with centers of excellence that are universal. And it's important we know this. There are times when people attempt to define centers of excellence, and if you listen carefully, you could be misguided. But it is appropriate. That's why we have the consultants here who have the expertise, but more importantly, they are involved in centers of excellence, precisely the African centers of excellence that have been in place for quite some time, emerging from a World Bank facility that was given to Nigeria. And the African Center of Excellence have been identified, approved, and are operational in a number of universities. I think both federal and state, am I right? As well as private universities. Yes. So we ask them to come and share knowledge with you. The reason being simple. Let me say this. There are some things I believe we cannot compromise. But like I said, as a takeoff point, for me, if I were to define a center of excellence, it is simply an entity or part of an entity, of an institution that has been carefully identified in the context of its exceptional capacity of both personnel and equipment, as well as standards, and in all cases, global standards of operations. That is my definition of centers of excellence. And I insist, it is global.
In a goodwill message, the Executive Secretary of the NBTE, that's Professor Idris Mohamed Bugaje, observed that the selected theme for the polytechnics is very important as it reveals a nexus between the university's centers of excellence and that of the polytechnics. He regretted that despite the billions invested into research and development over the past 60 years of Nigeria's history, little visible outcomes have been achieved because the research has not been geared towards innovation until TETFund's current efforts.
Yesterday, the Council on Nursing and Midwife came to me on a courtesy call in MBTE Kaduna, and they were lamenting the flight of skilled nurses to other countries of the world. They were calling it a brain drain. I said, please change that name. If the world needs Nigerian nurses, train more of them, open more colleges for training of nurses and midwives. Send them out, let them bring foreign exchange to Nigeria. Let it be a brain flow rather than a brain drain. So I hope our 6 centers of excellence will sit up. Please, you should not disappoint either the ES of the TETFund, nor the ES of the MBT. We are going to monitor your activities, and we'll make sure that you really deliver on those mandates.
There was also a message from the Executive Secretary of the NCC, that's Professor Paulinus Chijoke-Okwele, who was represented at the event by Lawrence Babatunde Aremu.
This workshop is very crucial and important to the centers, selected institutions, and individual participants. It is a given opportunity to train the participants on how to achieve the goals of setting up the centers at this crucial time. A capacity building of this nature will also enable the participants to rub minds together and tap experience from each other and the resource persons. The workshop, in addition, helps staff of the newly created centers to be more educated on the aims and objectives of their creation, thereby making them to start on a sound footings. Concomitantly, the centers will therefore be able to deliver on their mandates in the area of R&D vis-a-vis innovation unhindered.
The goodwill message from the NCCE was followed by an icebreaker from the resource persons, Professor Galadanchi, Professor Akinyemi Olukayode, and Professor Aderemu, who all shared their experiences on how to start up and sustain their respective centers of excellence. Finally, it was time for the main event. 3 lectures were given, starting with Professor Galadanchi, who delivered a presentation on the modalities for establishing centers of excellence.
Wherever he is, because when you move out, you must give somebody else the responsibility to do what you have to do. All of you now have responsibilities. You're going to be in Abuja for 3 days. Doesn't mean all you're doing now will have to stop. No, somebody is behind, somebody is left behind to do your work. So you shouldn't say because you're not around as a chief executive, your deputy cannot do anything. So you give the deputy, the powers to do what you're doing. That's something that you can do. All right? If it's not done, you can do it.
Following this up, Professor Akinyemi Olukayode delivered a lecture on the techniques for teaching and research in these centers of excellence.
So what exactly do you do? What makes you a center of excellence? There are 2 things that are very critical, and that is your teaching and your research. These are very, very core mandates of a center of excellence. So that's why we are talking about teaching and research excellence. Your teaching has to be excellent, and your research also has to be excellent. And so I will now be telling you what is the meaning of excellence with regards to teaching and research in the concept of a center of excellence. Please, where is that? Okay, see here.
Day 1 of the workshop was brought to a close by Professor Aderimo, who gave a lecture on the strategies for sustaining these centers of excellence.
Now, what is sustainability? In my presentation here, I'm saying that sustainability is the continuation of project activities and sustenance of project outcomes after the initial primary grant expires. Now, 1 billion naira is given to you. It will expire one day. So how do you now sustain that your center beyond that 4 years? So you need to be thinking of a lot of activities that can either bring money to the center or that will make the center more operative.
TETFund understands that a great way to contribute to sustained faculty learning is to organize a workshop about content or pedagogy for the institutions it supports. These events not only expose colleagues to new ideas, but they also contribute to the convener's understanding of the issues as well. Based on the capacity building workshop, the participants can gain better insight and a better understanding of the high expectations of TETFund while acquiring greater skills to meet those expectations. TETFund can in turn gain an insight into the necessary actions that need to be taken subsequently to guarantee success of their new initiative.
Now, that was quite insightful and educative. Did you know that research on learning shows how important active engagement is? Effective workshops actively engage participants and provide opportunities both for the participants to learn from one another and to make progress on applying what they have learned in the workshop to their own teaching institutions. Now, anyone who's ever planned a workshop will tell you that it's a big job. And planning a good one, well, that takes organization, focus, and a lot of creativity. So how do you prepare for a workshop that will be not only relevant and productive, but memorable? Well, you can define the goals, decide who will attend, choose the right location, create an agenda, and develop a flow plan. But the taste of the pudding is in the eating. Well, in the next edition of the Paradigm Shift, we will be shifting our attention, pun intended, to day 2 of the Capacity Building Workshop for COEs of Polytechnics and Colleges of Education. We will be breaking down all of the papers that were presented on that day and how COEs will be integral players alongside the upcoming National Research Foundation in the institutionalization of R&D in Nigeria. And that is the paradigm shift. Join us again on the next edition of the program. Until then, thank you for stopping by. Good night.